On Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
My cousin, pregnant by my husband, ruined my marriage, but the unexpected twist 6 years later revealed that my own parents had been lying to me all this time. My life took a drastic turn when, at the age of 29, I discovered that my husband was sleeping with my cousin. This girl, barely 20 years old, whom I will call Sarah, was temporarily staying at our house while looking for a place of her own. She had only been living with us for a few weeks when they started their affair behind my back. The hardest blow came when, weeks after she had moved in, she came back to visit us with devastating news. She was expecting my husband's baby. Although he begged me for another chance, swearing that he would never fail me again, I could no longer trust him. I packed my things that same day, moved in temporarily with a friend, and filed for divorce immediately. From that moment on, I cut off all contact with my ex and with Sarah. I informed her parents about what had happened, although I don't know their reaction. It took me a long time to recover emotionally, as the two people who betrayed my trust were extremely important to me. My husband, obviously, but also Sarah, whom I always considered a little sister. I had taken her in myself without charging her anything, and supported her artistic aspirations when even her own parents had doubts. And that's how she repaid me. During those 6 years, I kept my distance not only from Sarah, but also from my aunt and uncle, as I had nothing to say to them. My parents claimed to have broken off relations with them as well, and I believed them without question. Now I realize that probably wasn't the case. Sarah's mother is my father's younger sister, and also my mother's best friend from university. That's how my parents met. I knew that distancing herself from them must have been complicated because of their closeness. To clarify, I never asked them to break contact. It was their decision, arguing that they could not continue to relate to them morally. However, I recently received something totally unexpected, an invitation to Sarah's wedding, where she also asked me to be her maid of honor. I was completely taken aback. After 6 years without communicating and never receiving a formal apology, she suddenly asked me this. Although I have practically overcome my failed marriage, the betrayal is still something I cannot forget. I responded by rejecting both proposals, and, carried away by my indignation, I wrote to her that I never wanted to hear from her again, telling her to go fuck herself. Considering our history, my reaction was quite moderate, but my parents called me the next day to scold me harshly. They told me that Sarah's parents had contacted them because she was very hurt by my response. Apparently, Sarah saw this invitation as an opportunity to reconcile, but instead of forgiving her, I chose to be cruel. My parents insisted that after all this time, I should forget the past and take this opportunity to reconnect with the family, instead of behaving like a jealous, spiteful person. I couldn't believe they took that stance knowing how much I had suffered. We had a heated argument where they accused me of exaggerating, saying that we all make mistakes and that I had surely made mine too, so I couldn't blame others forever. But destroying a marriage is not a simple mistake, it is a conscious choice. Sarah was already an adult and knew exactly what she was doing. It is worth mentioning that she decided to have the baby, although unfortunately she suffered a miscarriage. Otherwise, she would now have a 6-year-old son with my husband, and I am convinced she would have taken my place as a wife. After losing the pregnancy, they no longer had a reason to stay together. As far as I know, they ended their relationship a few weeks later, and her parents took her back to our hometown. I honestly believe that no one in their right mind would forgive something like that. I don't think I'm wrong, but I need to confirm it. Am I the bad guy for refusing to attend the wedding of my home-wrecking cousin, refusing to be her bridesmaid, and not wanting to reconcile with my family? Update 1. Thank you so much for the huge number of responses. I am deeply moved that so many people took the time to comment and even to write to me privately. Your kindness has made me feel much more confident about my decision. Yesterday, I decided to confront my parents directly after avoiding them for days. I needed to know if they had really cut ties with Sarah's parents or if they had lied to me to avoid my anger. During the call, I was direct and to the point because I only wanted a clear answer. I barely mentioned the subject of Sarah's parents, and if they had kept in touch, they began to hesitate suspiciously. I sensed that they were hiding something, so I pressed them until they finally confessed. Although they had tried to distance themselves for the first 2 years after my divorce, they had re-established contact approximately 4 years ago. They had been extremely careful not to let me find out, knowing that I would be angry, and they were right. When they admitted that they had always been in contact with Sarah's parents, I hung up immediately. I had nothing more to say to them, and I didn't want to listen to them. What really hurt me wasn't so much that they had maintained a relationship with Sarah's family, but the lie they had told for years. They kept trying to get in touch with me, but I was too furious to take their calls. Then they started sending me messages apologizing for hiding all this, explaining that they did it because they knew full well that I would be angry if they continued to have a relationship with Sarah and her parents. I don't understand why they went to such extremes. If they had told me the truth from the beginning, it might have hurt, but at least I would have valued their honesty and possibly even understood the circumstances. After all, Sarah's mother is my father's sister and my mother's best friend. They didn't make Sarah destroy my marriage. That was her decision alone, and they probably suffered as a result too. I didn't blame them directly, but I was glad that my parents avoided them because keeping in touch would have led to awkward situations. Even if they had chosen to stay in touch and been honest with me from the start, I wouldn't be as angry as I am now. The fundamental problem is that they lied and withheld information for years. Now they are trying to force me to reconcile with Sarah just because they no longer want to keep hiding things from me and want to normalize their relationship with her parents. They continue to think only of their comfort, not of me. I can't imagine a more selfish attitude. Finally, I decided to block them. Because I no longer want to have anything to do with people who don't respect or understand me, the minimum requirements in any relationship. I have survived betrayals from loved ones before. If I could overcome that, I can surely live without my parents too. Of course it will be painful. During these 6 years, knowing that I had at least my parents' support kept me going, but now I discover that they also betrayed my trust. As much as it hurts, I don't want to keep people like that in my life. I think I've endured enough pain and betrayal for one lifetime. I don't need any more. Thanks again to everyone for reading this far and for showing me so much support. I can't put into words how much it means to me in these difficult circumstances. Update 2. Hi all. It's been 2 weeks since I cut off communication with my parents and blocked them. I hadn't heard anything from them until yesterday morning when they suddenly showed up at my door. As soon as I opened it, they started explaining that they felt terribly guilty about their actions and wanted to apologize in person. They told me that they had tried to contact me repeatedly over the past 2 weeks, but since I had blocked them, they hadn't been able to. With no other alternative, they decided to travel to my city to talk face-to-face and resolve things, acknowledging their unforgivable selfishness but wanting to take this opportunity to apologize. Although I was still skeptical and annoyed by their lies, I decided to give them a chance and invited them in. They explained that when they resumed contact with Sarah's parents, they were going through extremely difficult times. It was understandable considering Sarah's bad decisions. She had never excelled academically, so getting accepted into a university had already been difficult. When she finally managed to get into a decent institution, she decided to give up everything for her dream of becoming an actress. I supported her even in that because, although she was not exceptionally talented, I could see from videos of her stage performances that she had genuine passion and the potential to improve with time and experience. So she left university and came to my city to pursue her dream, always with the support of her parents. It was very difficult for them because their other 2 older children led conventional and contented lives, while she seemed to reject established norms, worrying them with her impulsiveness. Just a few months after moving in, they received the news that she was pregnant with my husband and had become a homewrecker. This revelation broke them even more, and they tried to get her to return, but she refused, arguing that she wanted to have the baby and stay with my husband. Throughout my divorce proceedings, Sarah's parents were fighting their own battle, trying to get their daughter to listen to them, but she completely refused. They were already going through a tremendously difficult time when my parents also cut them out of their lives. They faced all this completely alone, and when Sarah finally suffered a miscarriage and returned home, they didn't know where to start. They started trying to contact my parents for emotional support, constantly apologizing for Sarah's actions, even though it wasn't really their fault. My parents tried to ignore them at first, but eventually gave in to offer them some comfort. In addition, the rest of the family also avoided them because, although we tried to be discreet, rumors spread. Part of that could be my responsibility, as I discussed the situation with some cousins and, although I asked them to keep it a secret, it is impossible to know who might have talked. The situation has now improved. The rest of the family no longer completely avoid them as they did before, but things are still not back to normal. Over the years, Sarah's parents have expressed deep regret for what happened, and they themselves have never fully forgiven Sarah, although they have learned to live with it because, after all, she is their daughter. My parents explained to me that they were the only real support for Sarah's parents, who had been practically disowned by everyone for a time. They didn't want to abandon them completely for something that wasn't even their fault, while they faced the consequences of their daughter's actions on a daily basis. Obviously, it must have been terrible for them, but my parents also knew that I was going through extremely difficult times, and they didn't want to hurt me by keeping in touch with Sarah or her parents. Without realizing it, they started lying to me about this, and although they planned to tell me eventually, they never found the right moment for fear of hurting or losing me. So they continued lying and feeling guilty, and their recent behavior was more a projection than anything else. I was right when I thought they wanted me to reconcile with Sarah and her family so they wouldn't have to keep hiding their support for her parents. They apologized deeply for what they said recently, admitting that they had no right to pressure me, especially knowing my suffering. The decision to forgive Sarah was entirely up to me, and I was perfectly justified in not doing so, as her actions were unforgivable. They acknowledged that, in my position, they probably would not have forgiven either. They said they withdrew everything they had said that day, although obviously I cannot just forget it. After our conversation, I understood that the situation was not as simplistic as I had imagined. Sarah's mother is my father's sister, and although I don't have any siblings, I probably wouldn't want to see them suffer as she has suffered either. On second thought, it's true that they were hardly to blame in this situation. They didn't raise Sarah to behave like this. They were normal parents who tried to do their best. It was she who strayed and took everything for granted. I don't think it's the parenting that's to blame. Some children turn out this way despite their parents' best efforts. But as complex as the situation is, I still have a hard time accepting that my parents lied to me for so many years. I can't just instantly forgive and forget. I told them that I appreciated their attempt to apologize and save our relationship, and that I was glad they were finally being honest, but that I needed time to process all of this before deciding if I wanted to keep them in my life. I have been through so much, and they don't understand how horrible it has all been. They don't know how devastating it is to be repeatedly betrayed and deceived by loved ones, at least not on this scale. They seemed to understand and told me I could take as long as I needed, that they would wait for my answer. Then they left, and that's exactly what I'm going to do now, process all this and see where it takes me. I'll just let things flow. Update 3. It's been several days since my last update. Although I haven't yet decided what to do about my parents, I have received several messages from Sarah's parents. I was quite surprised, as after our last interaction 6 years ago, we had never communicated again, nor had I tried to contact them. Obviously, after everything that had happened, any conversation between us would be extremely uncomfortable, so we simply kept our distance. I never blocked them because it honestly didn't occur to me. At the time, I had more pressing concerns. In their messages, they told me that they had never formally apologized for what had happened in the past and wanted to do so now. They acknowledged that perhaps it was not for them to apologize for their daughter's actions, but as parents they felt a certain responsibility, because no matter how much children grow, their actions always reflect their parents to some extent. At least that is their belief. For a long time, they avoided communicating with me because they felt they did not deserve to speak to me after what their daughter had caused. Sarah had destroyed a happy marriage, and although my husband was equally to blame, they could not deny her involvement. If he cheated on me with Sarah, he probably would have done so with anyone else, but the fact is that it was Sarah who ruined my marriage, something that no apology can change. Now, regardless of whether I accepted their apologies or whether it was really for them to ask for them, they wanted to express their deep regret for all the damage caused and especially for having collaborated with my parents in hiding information from me, as if they hadn't already caused enough pain in my life. They recognized that they had no right to put my parents in that situation where they had to lie to me, and they wanted to apologize for that as well as for everything else. They had forced my parents to become liars and had helped to maintain that charade. For all these reasons, they were deeply sorry, knowing that although they suffered because of Sarah, I had suffered much more because of everyone. Although no apology could repair the damage caused, they felt obliged to do so, hoping that I might find it in me to forgive them one last time. I have reread their message countless times in the last few hours, and I really don't know what to think. One thing is clear. This situation is not as simple as I always believed, and although nothing will change the fact that I have suffered more, it cannot be ignored that other people have also gone through their own difficulties. I honestly don't know what to say. I feel sorry for them, because of Sarah, they have also had to suffer, and I know they are good people who didn't deserve this. But I am also a good person who didn't deserve what happened, so it's a terribly confusing situation. If I was already baffled before, this message has made it even more difficult for me to reach a conclusion. I would appreciate any advice or guidance, because I feel paralyzed. I don't want to lose my parents, I really don't, because as I mentioned, they have been my only pillar during these years. I have friends, but there are limits to what they can do, and I love my parents deeply, I always have. However, they have all betrayed me in one way or another. I don't want to constantly sound like a victim, but it's a fact that I have gone through terrible experiences because of these people, so naturally I find myself in a complicated position. I don't want to end up completely alone, but I also don't want to become someone who lets themselves be trampled on without defending themselves. I just don't know what to do anymore, I'm totally lost. Update 4. Hello again. It's been a few weeks since my last update. Until recently, I had been avoiding everyone, because I needed space and time to reflect on everything I had recently discovered. It was too much information to take in, especially when it came to my parents, so I needed to distance myself without rushing into any decisions. I have finally decided to talk to my parents, and although we can't resolve everything immediately, I will give them time and we will try to rebuild our relationship. I don't want to give up on them, and I'm convinced that they really feel guilty about everything that's happened. I haven't spoken to my aunt and uncle or replied to their message, but I told my parents that there was something I wanted them to know. I don't hold them responsible for Sarah's actions or anything else, but I also can't forgive them, contact them, or pretend that everything is fine, because Sarah is still their daughter, and I want absolutely nothing to do with her. My parents conveyed this message, and my aunt and uncle replied that the simple fact that I had replied to them was enough for them, and that they did not expect me to maintain a relationship with them by pretending normality, which reassures me. My parents and I have agreed to be more honest with each other and try to repair our relationship gradually. I'm not sure it will work, but I don't want to lose them, and I think it's worth a try. I know they are genuinely sorry and willing to change, which seems to me to be reason enough to give them another chance right now.